Coming around are the same ones we had last week. One is for a women's Bible study on Wednesday mornings that I teach, and the other one is for a medical women's Bible study that Dr. Galbreath will be leading, and so I'll pass those sign-up sheets around. They already have names on them, but if you have not signed and you would like to, please put your name on those. The final thing I wanted to say is I do have some t-shirts down here. They are $10. If you would like one, just stop by and get one before you leave today. It's cash or check. We can't do credit card, but if you would like a t-shirt, they're mostly men's, so if you'd like one, see me afterwards. I'd also like to point out that there were about 8 women from the side-by-side group that helped with the luncheon today, and a few of them came today to help serve. There's Nikki Sewell. Her husband is an internal medicine resident, and Jackie Schallenberg, where did you end up? Jackie's husband is Brian Schallenberg, MS4 Natasha, and David is her husband, David Goral. And then there were a number of other ones that helped as well, and I really appreciate that. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Autumn Dawn Galbreath. I have been working with CMDA for 11 years, and she was the first professional I met when I came to San Antonio. And she's one of my favorite people. She is an internal medicine physician. She works with urgent care clinics here in town and also with a major insurance company. She has 3 wonderful kids, Coggin and Ellie. Coggin is like 15 now, and Ellie is almost 13. And then there's Nora. And Nora is the princess of the household. She is 4. And she rules, she's 5 now. That's right, she had a birthday. And she rules the roost. And I really enjoy watching the posts on Facebook, particularly when they're about Nora. David is her husband. He owns and manages the Order of Restaurants, if you're ever in one of those. The food is fabulous. Dr. Galbreath, I really enjoy hearing from her because she's open and transparent about the real challenges of being a mom, of being a physician, and everything else. And so for Autumn Dawn Galbreath.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. So it's always fun to come back in this room. They let me come once a year, and I never, despite whatever crazy things I might say, they keep inviting me back. And it's so much fun to come in August because in August, 21 years ago, I sat in this room for a CMDA lunch. It wasn't called CMDA then, but we did exactly the same thing. And I sat right where you guys are sitting, and I had no idea what I was doing or what I'd gotten myself into, and I was a couple weeks into medical school. So I really remember what that feels like for those who are new medical and dental students, and it's really fun to get to be with you. I really appreciate that opportunity. So I love to read, absolutely love to read. I was this kid who, when I was little, I had this really thick comforter on my bed, and the reason that I had that particular comforter in large part was because I wanted a comforter that I could get under with a flashlight and my parents wouldn't be able to see the light shining through, and I would read till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. When I was in medical school, I actually had to impose a rule on myself that I was not allowed to read for pleasure when school was going on, because I will still do that, and I still do now, and I'm way too old to be doing that, but I'll start a book and I'll read until 4 and 5 in the morning, every chapter looking at the book and saying, oh man, in 3 hours, or looking at the clock and saying, in 3 hours I have to get up and get kids ready for school, in 3 hours I have to work, just 1 more chapter, and then I'll do it again. And so I started out as a kid, and I'm guessing a lot of you have enjoyed some of the same stories. I started out as a kid with classics like Anne of Green Gables and Charlotte's Web and the Narnia books and Oliver Twist and King Arthur. Now that I have teenagers and we try to pre-read books that they want to read and things that they're into, just so that partly so that we can decide whether we want to let them read it or not, but mostly, honestly, because we want to be able to talk to them. They get so carried away with whatever it is they're into. We want to be able to meet them there and interact. So now, much of my pleasure reading time is spent on Harry Potter and the Hunger Games and Percy Jackson and the most recent one, Divergent. These aren't things I would go pick out for myself, but they're actually great stories. And I was thinking about this as I was reading in the wee hours of the morning a few nights ago, and I was thinking about what all these stories have in common. Pretty much, I think it's safe to say pretty much all good stories have in common. That there's this person, this hero, this heroine, this central character who charges in and changes things. Changes the life of a runty little pig, if they're Charlotte the spider, or changes, you know, these epic battles of good and evil that they go in and fight, you know, he who must not be named, or, you know, whatever. They're going in and they're changing the world around them, and they're making a difference. And when I read those stories, I finish the book and I finish the story and I want to do the same thing. My heart is soaring and I want to go out and I want to change the world and I'm going to go and fight evil and fix problems and make things better. But the problem is that when morning comes, a few hours later, I realize that I am a chicken. And I'm not going to go do those things because I am afraid to do them. Mostly when it comes time to actually go out and change the world or whatever, make a difference in whatever the situation is, mostly I just want to go home and sit in my recliner with my latte and read a book about somebody else who's going out and changing the world and doing all these great things and putting themselves in harm's way. Because then I can feel inspired to do it, but I don't actually have to worry about what might happen. I worry that I'll get out there and look silly. I'm like seriously fashion challenged, so I worry that I'm going to get there and I'm not going to be dressed right. I worry that I'll be alone, that I'll be the only one who's willing to go out and fight this battle, whatever that battle may be. I worry that I'll hurt someone's feelings, or that someone will hurt my feelings. But the main thing that I'm afraid of, and the main reason why I don't put myself out there when I want to, and when I feel like it's the right thing to do, is because I'm terrified that I'll fail. I don't know if I'm the only one. Surely there's somebody else in here who has that same fear. But I'm terrified that I'll put myself out there, that people will see that I've put myself out there, and that I won't be able to do whatever it was that I set out to do. And I've had some epic failures. Not going to share them all with you because I know we only have 30 minutes. But I've had some pretty big ones. And those go a long way toward reinforcing that terror of, what if it happens again? What if I make such a big point about getting out there and everybody sees, and then everybody sees me fall on my face? I've shared some of those failures in here before. So the one that's most relevant probably to many of you sitting in here. So when I was a kid, in addition to reading until 3 and 4 in the morning, I also loved science and loved to cut things open and see what they were made of. And it helped that my dad and brothers are big hunters and fishermen, and so I could always go along and get the job of cleaning whatever it was that they caught or killed or whatever. And it was so much fun. I loved it. I would sit and read a book while they would hunt or fish because that was boring. But then when it was time to actually cut something up, that was awesome. So I mean, I started doing this when I was 4, 5. And I told my parents at about that age that I was going to be a doctor when I grew up. And my dad told me, well, sweetie, you can be a nurse, but only boys can be doctors. Interestingly, my son, at the same age, came home from preschool. This is a total tangent, but he came home from preschool one day and said, so-and-so in my class said that girls can't be doctors. But I told him, no, only girls can be doctors. I said, wait, let's me back up. We don't want to swing too far to the other side. So I started when I was 4 or 5, you know, heading on this path toward medical school and single-minded focus. And I'm guessing that a lot of the rest of you got here the same way. So dental school, medical school, whatever, PT school, nursing school. I'm guessing that a lot of you had to have the same level of focus and passion that I did. I wasn't one of those people who could just sort of sit around and do nothing and ace the test and end up here because I didn't have anything better to do. I ended up here because I spent a lot of my life's energy focused on being here. And so in medical school, I spent pretty much my life's energy focused on the next step, which was residency. And I had decided long before I got to medical school that I was going to go into surgery. I told you, I loved cutting things up. I was doing that when I was little. Although I did not ever have to actually put them back together, which I understand is a lot more difficult to do. But I started out doing that and loved it, and loved every dissection and every biology class, and sorry for those of you who are eating who I'm making you sick. But then when I was in high school and college, I worked as a scrub tech in an operating room at a hospital, and that was part of how I put myself through college. And I just loved it. And the whole goal was that I was going to be on the other side of the operating table one day. And so I got to medical school, and that was the whole focus of my medical school years, was getting into a surgical residency. Working my tail off to make the grades I had to make, and meeting the people that I needed to get the recommendations from, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and going to interviews, which cost a fortune, traveling all around the country, and doing all the things that you have to do to get into a residency. Particularly as a woman 21 years ago in a surgery residency. And so I did everything that I could do to make that happen. And on Scramble Day, I was one of the fortunate ones whose name was listed on the list there on the door of the dean's office. That I had the opportunity to reshape the whole rest of my life between then and the next morning when I got to come and scramble for a different residency. In fact, I was so confident that I was going into surgery that I didn't even bother to go check that list. They actually had to call me because I was the only one who hadn't come by to pick up my instructions for Scramble Day. So they had to call me to let me know that I needed to go and take care of that little detail. Big, epic failure. And I was really out there on this whole surgery thing. I mean, I told attendings on other specialties, oh yeah, I'm not at all interested in this specialty. I'm going into surgery. I mean, I'm just doing this because I have to. Not the best idea, just FYI. I told the internal medicine program director here, who was my attending for one of my internal medicine rotations, he was talking to me about how he would love to see me go into internal medicine, and I said, if I would not go into internal medicine, that's the last thing I would ever do. I can't stand internal medicine. So on Scramble Day, when I sat in his office and said, you guys have a prelim spot in internal medicine, what do you think about letting me take it? He was like, that's the last thing you would ever do. Yeah, that's true. But epic failure. I mean, that's not the sort of thing that I spent, I borrowed $100,000 for, or that I spent 3-4 years of my life at that point doing, eating, sleeping, breathing, medical school to end up sitting in that office on Scramble Day trying to talk my way into a prelim spot in the last specialty I would ever go into. And there I was. I told you I have lots of stories. I'm only going to tell one more. So along the way, in my class in medical school, I'm shifting gears, setting that story on the back burner, I will come back to it. In my class in medical school, my first day of orientation, I met a guy who was in my class who I was interested in. We started dating October, November of our first year. He hated medical school. He was one of those people who came here because he was so smart he could get here without having anything better to do. Hated it and left at the end of first year, but we ended up getting married the following year. He came for his MR degree, that's what I tell him. So we got married the following year, and we have, as you heard from Kelly, we have 3 kids who I could tell lots of fun stories about. But so David's career path has been winding. He came to medical school, couldn't figure out anything else better to do, so he went to law school, borrowing money all the way, and finished law school. That wasn't quite doing it. He didn't think that was too interesting, practicing law briefly. No, so then he decided he was going to start a restaurant. What else would you do in your spare time? And then he's telling me one day, he's testing recipes. The kids and I are trying out 4,000 different versions of chocolate chip cookies, which sounds like a fun job. It's actually very stressful because he would say, are these better or are the ones last Thursday? I'm like, I don't know. It's very stressful for me. I'm not that discerning. But so he's trying out recipes and he's getting it all planned out, and he keeps saying, oh man, the thing that's the hardest thing to figure out about how I'm going to make this work is how do you teach somebody else to do this and make it totally consistent every single time and make it exactly the same way, whatever they're going to make. And you know what? I've been thinking about it. I know a place that knows how to do that. And I said, if you're about to tell me that you're going to work at McDonald's, I'm not okay with that. And he said, how did you guess? And I was like, okay, I'm not okay with working at McDonald's. We can do a lot of other things, but not work at McDonald's. But sure enough, there he went to work at McDonald's, which is an interesting story. Because he went to interview the first day. He went to talk to them at the first McDonald's, and he went in a suit that he used to wear to the law firm. And he gives this whole big thing, and I just want to work here, but I promise I'll make a commitment to you for 6 months because I'm trying to learn, and da-da-da-da-da. He goes through the whole thing, and the guy goes, uh-huh. Yeah, I don't think we need anybody right now, thanks. Not the way to interview at McDonald's, just in case any of you have that interview. But I tell those stories because they sound funny now, but there was a lot of tension going on with, you know, we got a lot of medical school and law school loans to repay, and McDonald's is not going to cut it. And I'm, you know, in residency, and McDonald's is not going to make the extra income that we need. And just, why are we opening a restaurant anyway? How did we get to that point? What are we doing here? And of course, there are other issues deeper than just his career. But yeah, one day we came to the point where we were sitting across the table from each other, and we've been fighting so much, so badly, for so long, that we looked at each other and we said, why do we keep doing this? And I don't mean why do we keep fighting, why don't we make it better? I mean, why do we keep trying to make this work? I mean, this is just ridiculous. This is wasting both of our time, taking a lot of energy, and we're not getting anywhere. We are not good together, and this is not a good path to keep going down. And interestingly, tell you a lot of insight into how mature a person I am, how deeply spiritual. My first thought was, my parents are never going to let me forget this. And meaning, if we divorce, my parents are never going to let me forget it. Not, it's wrong, it's not biblical, what about my children? But this whole thing that drove, still sometimes rears its ugly head, driving me of, I want people to accept me and approve of me, and I don't want to fail. Not because I want to make this work. I mean, yes, I do, but in that moment. It wasn't, the thought that came into my head wasn't because I want to make this work because it's the right thing, because I love this person, because I made a commitment, because all these right reasons, but I'm failing again, and my parents are going to know. Epic failures. Not good stories, not fun, not things that, when I was sitting where you are, I wasn't planning on those things happening. Not that I had not had failures before, that I certainly had, but they were not as large or as public as those failures that I was looking at. So that kind of failure under my belt, you can't really blame me for holding up at home with my latte and my book, right? I mean, you can only put yourself out there so much, and then you get a pass. Like, eventually, you get a pass. Okay, you've tried, you've done enough, you get to just stay home now. Well, I wish that were true. But interestingly, the Bible has a lot of stories a lot of great stories that are similar to these stories that I love so much, with these people going out and changing the world. David and Goliath, Daniel and the lion's den, Joshua and Jericho, Moses and Pharaoh, Ruth and the king, whose name I can't pronounce. Those stories, similar to all the stories I was talking about earlier. They've got a world changer right in the middle, who put himself or herself out there and who was willing to be public, to risk failure, to charge out there and change the world. The difference between them and other books, most of the books that I read, is they didn't have a chance. They did not have a chance. Some runty little kid in a slingshot standing out on a field against a 9-foot giant, there's no chance. It doesn't make any sense for him to put himself out there. That's just setting yourself up for failure. But all of those stories, when I look at them and when I think about them, the common thread, hopefully this is very obvious to you, the common thread is that God walks out there with them. God takes this runny little kid who just was the delivery boy, supposed to take lunch to the soldiers. Instead, there he is with his slingshot on the battlefield that the soldiers are too scared to go on to. God takes the hand of this Jewish immigrant, Daniel, not even immigrant, but Jewish prisoner who was captured and taken away from his homeland. God takes his hand, and he defies the orders of the king and ends up walking around in a cave full of lions. That's a crazy story. Not even Harry Potter, not even J.K. Rowling can come up with anything as crazy as that. God takes the hand of Joshua. So here's this general. You know, he's going to go capture, he's going to go take over one of the most powerful fortified cities in his world. And you know who he takes with him? A bunch of soldiers with no weapons, and all the priests from the temple who are carrying trumpets. Crazy story. That's crazy. There's no way that those stories should result in anything other than total, complete failure. Moses is a murderer, he's a runaway, he's a stutterer, and there he is, barging right up to the throne room of one of the most powerful rulers in the world that he lived in, saying, God sent me here to tell you to let all your slaves go. Ruth, an immigrant, well, again, a part of these people who were captured, a foreigner, living in this land, a woman, which was, there were no equal rights or equal opportunity at all at that time. And she goes walking right into the throne room, again, of the most powerful ruler in her world, to just ask him a personal favor, knowing that it was illegal. Those are crazy things for people to do. And yet, they do it because God took their hand. Not because they wanted to, not because they thought it would be exciting and fun and it would be a cool story for us to know about now, 2,000, 4,000 years later, but because God said, you know what, I know you want to stay home. Moses, I know you want to hang out tending your father-in-law's sheep, but guess what? We're not going to do that today. Ruth, I know that it's dangerous. I know you could lose your life, but guess what? This is where we're going today. To each one of those people, God took their hand and walked them right into the middle of insanity. And failure wasn't just embarrassment, wasn't just, I have to tell my parents I couldn't make this work, or everybody in my class knows I didn't match. Those were painful failures, but those were nothing compared to, these people were all facing death when they walked in to the battles that God called them into. They should have been failures, and yet they weren't. And God's words to those people, specifically to Joshua, but really for those people at that time, Joshua chapter 1, verse 9, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. That message was directly for those people at that time, but it's for you and me also. God doesn't need caffeine-addicted book readers sitting at home. God doesn't need perfect people who can get out there and make sure, who can feel guaranteed of success when they go out to fight their battles or to do the tasks in front of them. God doesn't need that. What God needs is runty little kids who are willing to say, well, I got a slingshot, will that do? Or women who are willing to say, well, I may be forced to be queen, I may be a prisoner in my own home here in the castle, and it may be illegal, but maybe this is why I'm here. Maybe this is why God brought me here. God needs people who are willing to say, okay, well, if God's going, then I'm in. And if we fail, if it looks to me like we fail, then I'm going to have to trust that there's some bigger purpose that I don't see yet. That God's doing something here and that I don't understand. But I'm not going to worry about what if this and what if that and what if this and what if that. Although Ruth did worry about fashion, because she did have a conversation with the head of the harem about what to wear before she went in there. I will say. So there is no failure. I mean, if God is pulling us out into that place and into that battle and into that situation, there is, by definition, there is no failure, right? So I'll close the loop on my two failure stories, two of my many failure stories. So the match yeah, the match turned out just the way it turned out. I went in and begged for a prelim spot in internal medicine, and that was pretty painful. And then I did an internal medicine residency, which I did not like. And then I got to the end of internal medicine residency, and I took a job. Actually, I had a job offer here at the medical school, and all of a sudden, I was doing something I never even knew. When I was a medical student, I didn't even know you could do that kind of job. I was teaching, I was working on a research project, I was doing administrative stuff, which I didn't even really know there was a job that looked like that job looked like, and I loved it, and it was so much fun. But really the moral of that story, maybe that's not the right word, but the success in that story isn't that I found a job that I liked or that I'm still doing a job that I like. The success in that story is that I look back now, and it took me a long time. I mean, it's been, what, 16 years since that day, Scramble Day, and it took me a long time to get to the point where I could look back on that and realize this wasn't about God finding me a job that I liked. This was about God changing who I was and God changing me in a way that couldn't have happened had I gone a different direction. I look back now, and I'm making this commentary for myself, not for anybody else about specialty choice, because God has his own story that he is writing for every one of you and is very different from mine. For my own self, I look back at who I was that day, you know, so confident that I had matched that I didn't even bother to check. You know the B word? I had a good dose of that then, but I think about what I would have looked like when I came out on the other end of a surgery residency. And I'm really, really glad for all of your sakes, and especially for the sake of my family, that God didn't let me go down that road. Because I really see how he would not have been able to work in me and change me and bring me to the place that he wanted me to be had he allowed me to do what I thought was the right thing to do. The moral of the story is not to leave the room going, oh my gosh, she didn't match, and what if I don't either? That's not the moral of that story. The moral of the story is God's bigger than all of that. And in the marriage story, you heard Kelly say that I'm married, and I am. We did not divorce, though it was a really, really, really rocky few years. And in that process, it was funny, a friend asked me one day, what are you most afraid of? And I said, I'm most afraid that this isn't going to work, and everybody's going to know, and everything that I've said that I stand for, and everything that I've said I believe in, and everything about my faith is just going to be a joke. And my friend said, you think God's that small? And that really made me step back and think, is God so small that if I have what appears to me to be a failure on this earth, that it's going to make a joke out of God, and that God is not going to be able to use that and redeem that in some way? And he has. He chose in my story to redeem it by changing both of us in a lot of ways that we needed to be changed, and making a whole new marriage between the two of us than what we had before. That's how he chose to. That's how he chose to write the story in our case. It looks different in different people's cases, but there's world changing going on. And what I want you to leave with is that idea that there's world changing going on all around us. And if we aren't willing to step out into it, if we're going to sit at home with our book and read about somebody else changing the world, God's going to change the world anyway. But if we're willing to step out there, God's going to change us, and in the process, we get to be a part of changing the world around us. The world here on this campus, the world of patients that you're going to see in your dental practices and your medical practices in residency, the world of colleagues that you're going to interact with, the world of your own spouse and children. God is going to change the world around you. And you get to choose whether you want to let him lead you into the middle of that and you want to be a part of that and be changed yourself in the process, or whether you want to stay home because it's scary. So, let's pray. Lord, thank you so much for the time and the opportunity to come together, for each of the people that you brought here today. Father, I pray for each of these students and staff members that as they go forth into the Health Science Center, that you will continue to change this place and to change the people here because of your people who are willing to let you lead them in your direction. In Jesus' name, amen.